Hello and welcome to the Pitt Mailbag Show here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're your hosts and college beat writers here, Chris Carter and Stephen Thompson, taking your questions every single week. Just send them into our emails or hit us up on Twitter. We're always here to answer your questions on Pitt football, Pitt basketball, or all things Pitt athletics here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Tuesday episodes, the release of this podcast, as well as the Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast. And as always, this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar, they have over 500 different available beers, 300 of those beers from local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap, and there's always new ones to try. We'll have more on them later. Steven, it is training camp week. Pitt football is back. And there's a lot of excitement around it. Players do report today, if you're listening to this or watching this on Tuesday. There's a lot of excitement for that. We won't be there. We will be there on Wednesday when media is allowed to first make our treks to Pitt training camp. And Steven, this will be your first one with the PG, but you're no stranger to Pitt training camp. You know how the deal is. How excited are you for you to get things back going?
I'm very excited. I've already started hydrating. It's we're not going to have as much time spent indoors in the AC. We're going to be out there on the scene in the hot August weather. We're going to be sweating, not as much as the players, but we are going to be sweating quite a bit. It is hard being a beat writer out there, but I am really excited. I'm really excited to watch some football actually get played. We spent a lot of time talking about what this team can be in 2024. Now we're going to get to actually see it for the very first time. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, as much as I'm already getting used to it at Steelers camp, it's still going to be a beast out at Pitt camp. But let's get into some questions about this. So, by the way, if you want to see all of our preview coverage, we have a preview article on the whole season that came out just this morning. We have our top 5 position battles and our predictions for how they'll play out in Monday's edition of everything. So we've had a lot of coverage. We've had each position has been previewed over the past couple weeks here, going through position group by position group. So if you need all that, go to post-gazette.com to get all those early looks at everything there. But we wanted to take your questions, which again you can email to us or tweet at us to get your question on the air. This question comes from Seth, and I think this is an important question overall for the entire football season. Seth asks, is Pat Narduzzi on the hot seat this season? Now, here's the thing. We've addressed Pat Narduzzi and his legacy and other things like that before, but let's take a step back and look at the hot seat question. That's always the fun thing to ask about coaches because hot seat is the hot term. Steven, I'm going to start with, I don't think Pat is on a hot seat per se, but I think his seat is warm because hot to me is one mess up and you gone. I think Pat Narduzzi is in the position where this needs to the turnaround. If it happens this season, everything's fine. No one has to worry about anything. But if the turnaround doesn't happen and they're another 3 or 4 win team this season, Pitt's going to be looking really hard at this situation and wondering like, oh boy, what is the future to come? Is this going to be the future of Pitt football? Is the good era of Pat Narduzzi done? But that's why I think it's warm. Hot to me means bad season and he's gone. And I don't think Pat Narduzzi's just there yet. What do you say?
Yeah, I say the same thing. I mean, I think he gets his mulligan for 2023. It was quite literally the worst season that he's ever had as a head coach. He's only ever been a head coach at Pitt, but 3 wins is very clearly unacceptable. And I think if you talk to Pat, I think he looks at it as more of a bump in the road, an anomaly, not something that's up to this program standard or even something that should be expected year in, year out from this program. But I think the only way that he can really prove that is if he goes out and improves. It's very simple. And I think you're spot on saying that it's warm right now. Next season, if it's anything similar, I think that he is definitely on the hot seat. Then you can start having those tougher conversations about whether or not Pat Narduzzi is the right person to lead this team into the future. But for right now, he kind of gets the 2024 season at the very least to kind of prove that he can get this program back to where he's had it for kind of the 8 years prior. I think the other thing is you got to kind of define what would another slip up count, like what counts as another slip up. To me, I think if he falls short of another bowl game, I think that's when you start having these conversations. And certainly, if he falls under 5 wins, I think that's when you definitely make them more serious. But, I think if they go bowling again, which I think is certainly possible and probably even likely, quite honestly, I think Pat Narduzzi is certainly, his job will certainly be safe and he'll get a little bit longer to kind of get this program back to kind of the highs that he had him at in 2022 and 2021.
No, I agree there. That's why I feel like again, the whole point of management. I think one of the best strengths that you can have is to not overreact to something, because when you do, you make harsh decisions based in the moment and not based on not analyzing for the future and what's going on there. And I know there's always people who say, well, what was this? I analyzed this and I still don't like it. I think Pitt basketball is a good example of patience. If they had gotten rid of Jeff Capel in the third year, they wouldn't have had the 2022 run, and you wouldn't have guys in the NBA right now with Pitt as a symbol, and Pitt doing pretty well on the recruiting trail right now. And yes, they haven't won a national championship or an ACC championship in basketball or anything, but there's no doubt that Jeff Capel has turned it around from where it was, from where he inherited it. And I think Pat Narduzzi, I think when you have success, you have earned, in my book, you have earned the privilege to be able to show that a bump in the road is just that, because another thing is, if you get rid of the guy who really does have it going well for you, and then you lose a good coach because you freaked out in the moment, then you're throwing a good coach and you're not sure if you're getting anything, because there was a long search before they found Pat Narduzzi. There was a stretch of coaches where they were very inconsistent, and I think it's why Pat Narduzzi has stuck around for so long, because the consistency has been there, and I think that's very important for the future of Pitt football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you look at his 9 years, he's only had 2 losing seasons. Like, I get how bad last year was.
I think it's 3.
He had a 5-7 year, and then 3-9 last year. You can fact check me on that one, but
I thought he had a 6-7. I might be wrong there. I apologize, but go ahead. I apologize for interrupting you.
No, you're good. But either way, like, the vast majority of his time at Pitt has been pretty successful. It's been more 8-win seasons than obviously 3 or 5-win seasons. So, I think you got to kind of look at the track record as well and play the odds a little bit. I mean, if I was a betting man, not only do I
you are correct. I thought that the 7-7 year was a 6-7 year. My apologies.
Yeah, I remember because that's just the weirdest record that I've ever seen. You don't see teams play 14 games and usually only win 7 of them in college football. But if you're playing the odds, next year is not going to be a losing season, because that's not what Pat Narduzzi and his coaching staff, through a bunch of different iterations of coaching staffs and offensive coordinators and roster turnover and everything like that, he's kept things pretty level and had this program in a pretty successful spot throughout his tenure at Pitt. So again, if you're playing the odds, I think you'd bet on a bounce back for Narduzzi and this program this year that'll keep him off of a true hot seat.
Absolutely. Let's move to another Pitt football question with training camp here. Eric asks, which position group on Pitt football has the best chance to improve the most? Stephen, I'll let you start this question. Is there a position group that you look at that has the highest upside to flip things around this season?
Yeah, I think there's one really obvious answer, but I think I'm going to go with one that's maybe a little bit more off the wall. But I think the defensive tackles are going to get a lot better this year. I think last year they were kind of banking on having some experience, but those guys were also bigger with some more size, kind of less speed and athleticism. This year, I think it's kind of the opposite. Not a ton of experience, but you've got, I think, a lot more talent, and I think a lot more quickness and athleticism. I think that plays to Pitt's system a little bit better. They've got to do better. They can't be pushed around in the run game like they were at certain times last year. But I think they're going to be much better getting after quarterbacks, getting in the backfield, creating some pressure. And I think that's just going to kind of fit better into the overall scheme that Pitt's run. I mean, these guys like Sean FitzSimmons or Nahki Johnson or even Nick James, these guys who might see themselves playing a lot this coming season, I think they kind of fit a physical mold that looks more like a Jaland Twyman or a Kalijah Cansey or a Keyshawn Camp. They're not particularly big, but I think the quickness and the athleticism Pitt has proven, that stuff works a lot. It works really well in their defense. And so if you get more guys like that in there, I think it's going to lead to a much better year for the defensive line as a whole.
No, I agree. I think that they have a lot of potential there, and they've also added a lot of guys there. Like you said, the obvious one there is quarterback. Like right. That's the one that's right there for the taking. I guess I can explain that is that, last year it was just inconsistency across the board at the quarterback position from Phil Dracovic, and then, eventually they get to Nate Yarnell. Christian Veilleux didn't worked out for a day and was looking very promising with the Blue Base game. But then again, I think asking for consistency is the biggest part here. And I think that honestly, when you look at the skill level of Nate Yarnell, his biggest thing isn't his arm, which was supposed to be the big thing on Phil, which is supposed to be the big thing on Veyer. His biggest thing is processing the field, staying on time, playing within a scheme. And that's what Pitt needs right now. That's what most college teams need. When people hear about game manager, they think it's an insult, but it's a compliment that you can manage the game, that you can process everything's going on in the field. To me, that's the biggest thing that the Pitt needs right now. They don't need a huge arm of a guy that's just going to sling it down the field and play gunslinger football. That's what got him into this mess. I think that they need a guy who can process the field, who can adjust to what defenses are doing. Nate Yarnell showed in a short span, he showed the ability to do that last season. If that carries over this season, I think that's a big deal.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I mean, like, Pitt just needs someone who is not going to put the ball in harm's way. It's going to keep them on schedule, but I think Nate can even give you a little bit of upside with his athleticism. He can run. I think he's creative too. I think this is partially the obvious reason, because they started from such a low point. The really maddening like interceptions, I think, that Phil and Christian would throw sometimes, I think that best illustrates it. I don't think you're going to see that from Nate Yarnell. If he does make mistakes, if this offense does get off track, it's not going to be because they're putting the ball in the opposing team's hands. I think they're going to be much smarter with the ball, and that's going to make a big difference.
And I hear you on that entirely. I want to switch now to Pitt basketball real quick. We do have a question on Pitt basketball. Cornell asks who we anticipate to see Pitt basketball, who leads Pitt basketball in scoring this year. Steven, I think there's a very chalk answer here when it comes to when it comes to Pitt basketball, simply because you and I both watched last season and we saw who kind of was the guy that was coming up on things here. So, I mean, Jaland Lowe is the obvious pick here, but there's new players on this team. There's also some, Ishmael Leggett's a guy who's going to come back, and he's not exactly going to just, not be involved at this point. But do you think Jaland Lowe maybe isn't the leading scorer because he's facilitating so much? He'll be giving more assists, or do you think it is just pick the simple answer, pick the 4-star guard who was really, really good last year?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think it's between Jaland Lowe and Ishmael Leggett. No disrespect to Cam Corhen or Zach Austin or Asmal Dalalik, but I think these guys are the two kind of obvious stars. They're going to be the two lead guards. And I think I'd fall more on the side of Ishmael Leggett, though. I think you alluded to this, but I think Jaland Lowe is going to be at his most effective when he is a facilitator. I think we'll take a slight step forward in scoring. I think he's going to obviously get more shots based on the simple fact that, Bub Carrington and Blake Hinson aren't there anymore. There's a lot more shots to go around. But, I mean, I think he averaged, 13 points per game since moving into the starting lineup over the final, over basically the back half of the year. I think you might see that go up to, 15 points or something like that. But, I don't have his assist numbers in front of me, but he'll average close to 6-7 assists, I think. I think he's going to be it's going to be much more about getting other guys involved for Jaland Lowe this year than it is about scoring himself. I think one of his best attributes is his handle and his abilities as a passer. I think he's going to have some really good shooting around him. I think he's going to have a great pick and roll partner in Cam Corhen right next to him. So I think there's a lot of ways in which Jaland Lowe is going to kind of diversify his game and become just that much more effective as a facilitator and as a floor general, I guess. And then he can kind of leave the scoring, or at least the bulk of the scoring to guys like Ishmael Leggett, who I think can be like a Jamarius Burton, who's, averaging close to, 16, 17, 18 points a game. I think, Burton was really good getting to the rim. He had a nice mid-range game. He was a really good defender as well. But, I mean, Ishmael Leggett's, I think, a much better, more consistent shooter from three, and I think that's really going to help him separate as well. So Leggett's used to, I think, being the leading scorer on a team. He's done that before. He's done that at the college level, and I think that's going to happen again for him this year.
I think it certainly would be a huge help to Pitt is if he continues to shoot from three well, if he's able to, be kind of if he's allowed to be more of just the two with Jaland being the one. I think their chemistry could be really good, especially if Cam Corhen emerges as that inside presence, because then they can space the floor out. They could do so much more. I think there's a lot of potential with this Pitt basketball offense. So good question from Cornell. Our next one comes from a friend and colleague, Alan Saunders, who works over Pittsburgh Sports Now. But when Steven put out the call for questions, Alan came with a question. So here we go. It's a Pitt-related question in a weird way. But here we go. Alan asks, would you rather fight 10 humans in rock costumes, a.k.a. Rock, the mascot of Pitt, or one live panther? Steven, there's only one answer to this question. I want no parts of a live panther. None.
Really? I don't think panthers are like that, man. I don't think one panther's like that.
You don't think a panther, bruh, you will be panther food.
No. Dude, panthers aren't even that big. They're like maybe the size of like a medium-sized dog, man. I think if you land a couple blows there, a panther is folding quickly. But then, like, as opposed to 10 humans, you think you could fight 10 humans?
In rock costumes? Yes. What are they going to do? Hit me with their mitts?
Yeah, or kick you or something? There's 10 of them.
They're too slow. First of all, all I have to do is just run around. They're gonna overheat in about like 5 minutes, because they all need breaks. They always switch. We've seen Rock quit in the middle of a Duke football game. He gonna quit in the middle of this fight. All right, like a few of them gonna be dropping out real fast. I mean, let me tell you right now. And let me say this: if Rock is watching this, come up and see me in the press box. I will fight you myself, Rock, and we will settle this. You'll settle this before a Pitt basketball game, a Pitt football game, whenever you want this year. I will take one of you down and show how easily it will be to take down 10 humans in rock costumes. Don't mess with me there. Panthers, the Panthers will eat your face.
No, man. I don't see it at all. I think I could take a panther much more easily than I could take 10 other human beings. Rock costumes or not. Give me the panther. Maybe we'll do this experiment. If you're challenging Rock, I'll challenge, whatever live Panthers are watching this right now. We'll do it for charity or something. I'll do a cage match or whatever at the Pete or something.
I just hope that this footage never ends up on the Peterson and Vincent scoreboard and they're like, Chris Carter, come on down. That'd be terrible. I don't want to actually fight.
Oh, that'd be some great halftime entertainment. Actually, forget the shooting contest. Forget like Red Panda. I want to see Chris Carter fight Rock. Let's do it.
That'd be terrible. All the memes that would happen from this, it would be disgusting. Anyways, thank you, Alan, for your question. Thank you, Seth, Eric, and Cornell for your real questions. Appreciate everyone there. Even though Steven thinks he could beat a live panther, maybe that's the thing. Maybe we test it out. Maybe we just throw you in the Pittsburgh Zoo and just see how you do, Steven.
It's just what you would. I think I have a better chance of surviving against a live panther than I do 10 human beings. I don't think that's unreasonable.
He is Stephen Thompson, a.k.a. the Panther Killer, here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Pitt Mailbag Show. I'm Chris Carter. We are your Pitt Mailbag writers. We will be covering more serious things once training camp does begin. Again, Pitt's football players do report today. That is Tuesday. Then we will be at the Southside facility on Wednesday talking to Pat Narduzzi. It's going to be media day. We'll talk to all the players and coaches. It'll be a great time. And then we start to get to see practices. You'll get all those practice reports here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Stay tuned for all the Tuesday episodes here on the Post-Gazette Podcast Network and on YouTube of the Pitt Mailbag Show and the Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive Podcast. We are back next week, keeping you up to date with all your big questions as the first week of first week of Pitt training camp gets underway. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.